12,566 feet. That is the depth at which the remnants of the once great ship, the Titanic, lays in the Atlantic Ocean. At that depth, no human can survive on their own. If somehow you were exposed to the pressure from the thousands of feet of water above you, your lungs would be crushed, killing you instantly. But there is a way to reach that depth and come home. There are 5 vessels on our planet that can be manned and dive to 12,500 feet, with Titan, created by OceanGate, being acclaimed as one of them. This is their story. The Titanic. Everyone knows the story. The unsinkable ship that struck an iceberg in the freezing Atlantic Ocean that left over 1,500 passengers dead. And some famous guy called Leonardo DiCaprio fits in there as well. If you know the story from the movie or history books, either way, it is one of the most fascinating events of the early 1900s, and even today, historians and explorers continue to strive to learn more about the 100-year-old ship. In 2009, Stockton Rush and Guillermo Sonlin founded OceanGate with a focus on increasing access to the deep ocean through innovation of the next generation of crewed submersibles and launch platforms. They took a fascination with the Titanic, which CEO Rush had a personal connection to, as his wife Wendy Rush is a descendant of Isidore and Edith Strauss, 2 people who passed away while on the original ship. Rush would grow up dreaming of becoming an astronaut, but due to some vision issues would never be allowed in a cockpit. Therefore, he would shift his career to becoming a flight test engineer for McDonnell Douglas Corporation, but would have a realization in his early 40s that he wanted to be an explorer, and this led to underwater expeditions. He would say in an interview, "All those things that I thought were in space were actually in the ocean." Rush would be known for his eagerness to explore, and this would sometimes lead him to make questionable decisions. He would consistently state, at some point safety is just a pure waste. I mean, if you just want to be safe, don't get out of bed, don't get in your car, don't do anything. At some point, you're going to take some risk, and it really is a risk-reward question. Deep sea exploration is not the same as space exploration because there is one issue with being underwater: pressure. Every day at sea level, we constantly have air pressure pushing our bodies from above at about 14.7 pounds per square inch. That is the accumulation of a column of air above us that reaches all the way to outer space. We don't think about it, it's just there, and to us, it's normal. But water is significantly more dense than air, and for every 10 meters that you dive, the pressure increases by 14.7 psi, or 1 atmosphere. This means at 100 meters, you would feel 147 psi, or 20,880 pounds. At 381 meters, or the height of the Empire State Building, you would feel 555 psi, or 80,000 pounds. And at 3,800 meters, where the Titanic lays, the pressure would be 5,532 psi, or 797,000 pounds. It is almost unimaginable, the pressure, and quantifies the difficulty of deep sea exploring, along with the importance of safety. Rush had a reputation for cutting corners and was known for hiring young engineers out of college who had the same passion for exploring as him, rather than experienced deep sea engineers. He would state that this was to inspire the younger generation, and while I do believe that is a noble desire, there also has to be a balance to ensure the safety of everyone on board. The Titan was the 3rd iteration of a 5-person submersible created by OceanGate and was built with 5 inches of carbon fiber with a titanium hatch and dome glued onto the vessel. A typical US Navy submarine is made with carbon steel because it is reliable and thoroughly understood. Carbon fiber is extremely strong and lightweight, but you typically see it in high-end luxury cars, not on the design of a deep-sea vessel. While it has proven to be a strong substance, it simply has not been around as long as carbon steel, and we do not have as much information about the material. One thing we do know is that carbon fiber does not bend or mold. When there is too much pressure, the material shatters like glass. I don't need to explain why this could be bad. Another example of this is Richard Branson's Deep Flight Challenger, made out of carbon fiber, that was originally stated as a project that will reach the deepest part of each of the Earth's 5 oceans, but Deep Flight refused to endorse the plan as the vessel was designed for 1 dive, not 5. One of the major design limitations is that the hatch had to be bolted down by 17 bolts from the outside. This means that there was no way for the passengers inside the vessel to escape escape if there was an emergency, making them 100% dependent on the surface support team to get them out of the vessel. The Apollo 1 space mission had a similar design and would turn into one of NASA's worst non-flight disasters. During testing, a fire would spark inside the ship, which would kill all 3 crew members because there was no way for them to escape. Rush, who wanted to be an astronaut, should be aware of this flaw, but they chose the design anyway. Another concern would be if the ship's electronics were to malfunction and they could no longer be tracked. If the vessel was to emerge and float on the surface of the ocean, there was still no way for the passengers to escape, simply at the mercy of the listed 96 hours of life support. During an interview in 2022, Rush was stated, "We run the whole thing with this game controller," which went viral at the time, but while almost laughable, there actually wasn't much concern from experts, as this was seen as pretty common. Most vessels operated from avionics, which is typically 2 joysticks and a few controls. Where there is concern is if the controller used Bluetooth rather than a wired connection, as anything wireless at that depth is simply unreliable and opening the door to other issues such as the power failing or the connection going bad. The Titan also did not have a locator beacon, which would notify other vessels of its location while near or on the surface. Most GPS type systems do not work in deep water, but there is still a system for when the vessel is near the surface. This was actually one of the concerns early on when the Titan went missing, that the crew was floating somewhere on the surface of the Atlantic while rescue efforts had no ability to locate them. Oh, and remember, the crew would be sealed inside. In 2019, OceanGate posted a blog post stating why the Titan was not certified by any ship authority. The vast majority of marine and aviation accidents are a result of operator error, not mechanical failure, and argued that classification focused solely on the physical state of the vessel and not its corporate actions, which it characterizes a constant, committed effort and a focused corporate culture of maintaining high-level operational safety. One of the most frustrating pieces of this story is that David Lockridge, the OceanGate Director of Marine Operations, whose role included overseeing the safety on the vessel, filed a quality control report in January of 2018, stating that no non-destructive testing of the carbon fiber hull had taken place to check for voids or delaminations in the carbon fiber layup that could compromise the hull's strength. Essentially, this is a stress test that David claims was never completed. David was told that OceanGate would instead rely on the real-time acoustic monitoring system, which he felt would not warn the crew with sufficient time to safely escape the vessel should an emergency occur. The day after he filed his report, he was summoned to a meeting in which he was told the acrylic window would not be suited to dive to the depths of the Titanic, because OceanGate would not fund the design for a window that is necessary to dive over 4,000 meters. David would reiterate his concerns and refused to allow crew testing without the hull scan. He was fired from his position shortly after. OceanGate would file a lawsuit against David that June, alleging he breached the terms of his employment agreement by disclosing sensitive material with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. In response, David filed a countersuit alleging that he had been unlawfully fired and that his actions were intended to ensure the safety of the passengers on the Titan. The lawsuit was eventually settled in November of 2018, but the design flaws, well, they were obviously never addressed. On Sunday, June 18th, about 400 miles off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, the Titan was carried to the area of the Titanic wreckage on its launch sled by the Polar Prince, a deep-sea support vessel. Right before the Titan is set to dive, the sled actually submerges with the vessel attached to 30 feet, where it can be stabilized in case there is a rough environment on the surface. This is where they dock and launch the Titan to continue further into the depths. There would be 5 people on board: CEO Stockton Rush, who would act as a so-called tour guide; PH, a Titanic expert and explorer; Shahzada Dawood, a successful businessman from Pakistan, and his son Solomon Dawood; and finally, multi-billionaire businessman and explorer Hamish Harding. At approximately 8 a.m., the Titan would submerge into the icy water. 2 hours and 45 minutes later, at 10:45 a.m., the Titan would lose contact with the Polar Prince. Now, this wasn't initially concerning, as on previous dives, there would be a window where contact would be lost, but unfortunately, this would inevitably delay any rescue efforts, as the crew would wait for 8 hours before notifying the U.S. Coast Guard at 5:40 p.m. After the craft was reported missing, the U.S. Navy analyzed its acoustic data and found an anomaly that was consistent with an implosion or explosion in the general vicinity of where the Titan was operating when communications were lost, although this was not made public at the time. By Monday afternoon, over 30 hours since the Titan had submerged, more rescue efforts would take place. There were three initial concerns, the first being the vessel was stuck at the bottom of the ocean, held down by something. The second would be the Titan was stuck in a current with little or no power, simply at the mercy of the ocean. And the third being the vessel had resurfaced somewhere in the Atlantic with no ability to be tracked. By Tuesday morning, more than 10,000 square miles had been searched, but there was no sign of the vessel, and by Tuesday night, there were banging noises detected, leading many to believe it was coming from the Titan and the passengers were still alive. But on Thursday morning, a robotic vehicle discovered the tail cone of the Titan on the ocean floor, with other parts of the ship being found as well. It was stated that the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber, meaning that the ship had simply exploded at a certain depth due to the pressure, killing all 5 of the passengers almost instantly. On Thursday morning, OceanGate would release this statement. These men were true explorers who shared a distinct spirit of adventure and a deep passion for exploring and protecting the world's oceans. We grieve the loss of life and joy they brought to everyone they knew. The aftermath of the incident has clearly brought on many to criticize OceanGate, and it's not hard to see why. But I would like to express my sympathies for the family and countless individuals that are affected by this loss. It is no secret that as we continue to progress as a human race, there will be a desire to push our boundaries of exploration, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is important to understand the cost of cutting corners and failing to ensure the safety of us all.